Hello, this is Seal Barber, looking at Henry VIII. Today we're going to look at how Cromwell gained Henry's annulment. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation you should be able to understand the steps taken to secure the annulment by Thomas Cromwell, and also understand the impact of the annulment for Henry, Catherine, Lady Mary and Thomas Cromwell himself. Cromwell realised that helping Henry gain his annulment could mean promotion. After Wolsey's fall in 1529 and his death the following year, Thomas Cromwell had realised that he could try to do what Wolsey had not, especially as since then the annulment had come to a standstill. Norfolk and Suffolk had both attempted to take on the annulment, however they failed, lacking skill and strategy. Thomas More, a lawyer and the new Lord Chancellor, was a devout Catholic and sympathetic to Catherine of Aragon, so he wasn't pushing it. His difference of opinion with Henry was so big that he retired in 1532, citing ill health. More wanted to avoid confrontation, but didn't manage to save his life. However, this meant that the way was open for Thomas Cromwell. Cromwell started working on it in 1531. He knew by this time that the Pope wouldn't budge, so he realised that another way had to be found. As a result of this, Cromwell made a radical suggestion. He said that it should be Henry rather than the Pope who had the power to grant the annulment. He also said that in order to give Henry's powers legality, that the law should be passed by Parliament, who were the representatives of the people. This would be a massive increase in the power of Parliament. It also meant that they wouldn't oppose Henry as a collective. By January 1533, Anne Boleyn had finally given in and she was pregnant. It was absolutely essential to Henry that the child was born in wedlock, otherwise they wouldn't be a legitimate heir to the throne. This meant that Henry became more determined than ever to get the divorce before the birth of what he hoped would be a legitimate son. On the 25th of January, Thomas Cranmer, the new Archbishop of Canterbury, secretly married Henry and Anne. Many, however, still didn't see this as legal in the eyes of the Church, because they considered that Henry was still legally married to Catherine. This was an issue that needed to be addressed. So in March 1533, the same year, the Act in Restraint of Appeals was passed. This said that England was an empire, and therefore Henry was the head. This meant that no one could appeal against the decision to another person, such as the Pope. This Act in Restraint of Appeals was the basis of granting Henry's divorce. Because they were an empire, we were subject to the rules of no one else, even the Pope. As supreme head now, Henry could rule over all aspects of life. He now had all powers previously held by the Pope, so the Pope could neither grant nor withhold annulments to anyone in England. This meant that by May 1533, a divorce hearing began, and now it was headed by Archbishop Cranmer. Catherine didn't accept its legitimacy, and so she refused to attend. But on the 23rd of May, it was announced that the original papal dispensation was invalid, and therefore that Henry should never have been able to marry Catherine of Aragon. This meant that their marriage had not been legal. So, as this was the case, he was a bachelor and free to marry Anne Boleyn. It also meant for Princess Mary that she was declared illegitimate. While she was still obviously Henry's daughter, she was no longer heir, and she was now reduced to Lady Mary, as opposed to Princess Mary. The annulment had taken 6 whole years. A week later, Anne was crowned Queen, with huge celebrations. They lasted 4 days, when Anne travelled from Greenwich Palace to the Tower of London. This celebration included over 300 boats, banners and flags. Anne made her way under a canopy of gold cloth before being crowned the Queen of England. In September the same year, Anne gave birth to a girl, Elizabeth, not the son that Henry had wanted. Securing a divorce from Catherine was Cromwell's big break. So from 1533 until his downfall in 1540, he was Henry's chief minister in all but name. No one after Wolsey was actually given this as a title. Cromwell provided Henry with advice and he implemented the royal will. He had to give Henry all he wanted, something Wolsey had failed to do. He gained many titles in that time and had a leading say in the country's legal, religious and financial matters. However, he was never an autorex like Wolsey had been. He didn't have Wolsey's freedom to decide policy. As Henry was older, he had taken a more active role in government. Cromwell's job was now simply to carry out Henry's wishes, such as Anne Boleyn's execution in 1536. Cromwell wasn't extravagant like Wolsey. He didn't have a huge household, and when entertaining important people, although he was lavish, he led a simple life outside of that. Henry didn't want Cromwell or any other minister to have the power that Wolsey had had, and as a result, Cromwell had less titles than Wolsey and was never head of the Royal Council nor Lord Chancellor. Like Wolsey, though, Cromwell's position depended on his ability to carry out the king's wishes, think through problems, and to come up with solutions. The sorts of questions that you might be asked on this is to maybe explain why Cromwell rose to become Henry's chief minister. You will be given a couple of bullet points to consider. In this case, you could think of Cromwell's work with Wolsey, which enabled him to meet Henry in the first place, and gave him the skills that he was required to have as the chief minister. You could also talk about the annulment and how it had brought him to Henry's attention, and how from 1533 until his downfall, he was the person that Henry turned to. You must also include information of your own, and this could be Cromwell's personality, for example, his hard working, his intelligence, and perhaps even his ruthlessness at getting rid of those who he considered his enemies, such as Anne Boleyn. This is C.L. Barber, 1977. Thank you for listening and for watching.